what the occult is a body of knowledge that has been hidden away. Occultare means to keep hidden from the eye. Now, why would anybody want to hide knowledge that is extremely important? Well, there's a very specific reason. But before we even get to that, we have to talk about what is this occulted knowledge. There's two general bodies of occult knowledge. In the mystery traditions and in schools, they talk about these as arcana. There's one called the minor arcana. This means the knowledge of the microcosm. It's dealing with the individual units of consciousness, the human psyche. So the first body of occult knowledge constitutes knowledge of human consciousness, how it operates, what our motivations are, things like that. The second body is called the major arcana. It is the macrocosmic understanding. Natural is derived from Egyptian. Nectar means spirit or God. So natural means of or related to God. So this is the spiritual domain, universal spiritual laws. The simple definition of word law, an existing condition which is both binding and immutable. Existing, it's present, it's in operation. It is binding. Binding means it has an effect. Doesn't care whether you're nescient or ignorant, it's in effect, and it is immutable. Immutable means that nothing you do can ever change it. You and I are bound by these laws, and you are already creating the reality that we are experiencing based upon interaction with these unseen laws, which govern the consequences of behavior. This body of knowledge has actually been called consequentialism. It's been called karma. It has been called moral law. God's law, that is essentially what it is. The knowledge of natural law and its operations constitutes the most deeply occulted information that exists on this planet. This is the thing that all the distractions are there for, the endless trivialities. It's all there to keep from understanding this. People have a real deeply mystified concept of what truth is, and we have to demystify it and then completely delineate that from perception. Truth is not dependent upon the perceptions of human beings. Human beings' perceptions are capable of wavering. They can waver slightly from the truth, and they can waver wildly from the truth. The demystified concept of truth is it's simply that which already exists, that which is and that which has been. That's all. The concept to keep in mind here is perception is not reality. It's the filter we see reality through. What the human being's work is to do is to align their perception to the reality which exists, which is truth. People will also try to give ridiculously overcomplicated and mystified definitions of what consciousness means. We have to demystify these terms. Being conscious of something is an ability of a being to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to events taking place within oneself, the microcosm, and in the macrocosmic world, the world at large. And the events taking place is the truth. So it's our ability to accurately perceive truth of what has happened and what is happening. That's consciousness. Now, how does consciousness express? There's only three ways: thoughts, emotions, and actions. So thought, it's a neutral force, the creative expression for consciousness within the individual. In order for anything to manifest in the physical domain, it had to first exist as a thought. Your emotions are feminine aspect of consciousness because other people don't feel your emotions. It's an internal expression. So the emotions in the mind-body-spirit connection are the spirit in which we do something. You could look at thoughts as the creative essence, which then blends with or marries to the feminine. Every single religious tradition that has talked of a Trinity, it is always a sacred feminine figure that the Father inseminates in some form, and then from that offspring is born a male child. What we're talking about here is behavior. It is the active or masculine principle that interacts with the physical world to change it. And hence, That is the only way to save ourselves. This is very important to understand. I hope everybody is clear. This is our internal Trinity, which constitutes the expressions for consciousness. So let's move on. Here's a very simple diagram. If people understand it, they really get how natural law functions. We start with available information. This constitutes potential knowledge. It can be gathered, it can be processed, it can be understood, and then it can be acted upon. You could also refer to this as the input stage. Next step that's built upon this is once you've taken information in, you then come to a position of understanding it. You recognize the patterns. So this is the second step in this process. In the first stage, your knowledge or lack of knowledge is going to lead to understanding or lack of understanding. If you have understanding present, your decision-making processes are going to be in harmony with what you say you want. You're going to understand this is what's necessary to get that, to make that happen, to manifest it. That's understanding. These processes take place in the human mind and are chosen by each individual based upon available information. So again, you can see if information is held back, if it is occulted, they'll never get to this step. They'll never understand. They'll never get to the second level of creating our reality effectively, efficiently. The third stage to this process is what you do with what you have come to know and understand. This is the action stage. Each individual's behaviors that they choose through their own free will is based upon the quality of their decision-making processes that are happening within the human mind. So this is behavior. When it's done with morality and ethics in mind, it's wisdom. When it's done without that, it's folly. Based upon these three processes, something is generated, physically manifested reality, the real world, so to speak. The manifested reality is the quality of the condition which manifests in any given society based upon the aggregate quality of human behavior within that society. It's a simple three-stage process that leads to a result. Is known as the Trivium. It is how we build our reality, either efficiently or destructively. Let's look at some of the principles of natural law. Principle means first, foremost, or most necessary. It is that which matters most. The familial connection doesn't matter as much as principles. Those relationships don't really have any real value unless they're based upon principles. These are the 7 general principles of natural law. They are mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. The principle of mentalism states that everything in creation is actually a manifestation of mind. What this means is everything that happens has to be a result of a mental state which preceded it. Therefore, we should be responsible for everything that we create by being responsible for that which we think. The principle of correspondence states that that which is above is similar to that which is below. The above is the macrocosm, and the microcosm, or the individuated units that comprise the whole. They are reflections of each other. They cannot be separated from each other. The universe is actually a holographic system. Why they call it hologram, holistic image, is if I take a hologram and I cut it in 4 pieces, you don't have a quarter of the image on one, you have 4 whole images that only lose resolution by a quarter. Everything is contained in all the smaller parts. So the universe is inside the individual. And the entire universe is like an individual. You look at the structure of the atom, and it's similar to the structure of the solar system, which is similar to the structure of the galaxy. Fractal or self-similar across all scales of its existence. The principle of vibration simply states that there is no such thing as rest, as dead or non-motion. Death, in that sense, is an illusion, because true death would be the cessation of all motion and energy. There is no such thing. It doesn't exist. If something's in existence, it's in motion. Everything moves, everything vibrates, and at the most fundamental level, the universe is pure vibratory energy. Matter is merely energy in a state of vibration. So the whole universe is spiritual, having an experience in solidity. The principle of polarity states that everything has a dual nature to it. Identical in nature, but different in degree. So are hot and cold really opposites? Or can we simply look at them as the presence of heat energy or the absence of heat energy? And whether it's concentrated in a specific area, which would make it hot, or whether it's absent from a specific area, which would make it cold. At our level of perception, they're opposites, but at the fundamental level, they're the same thing. Are knowledge and ignorance the same thing? Truth is always present. It's a matter of whether it's taken in and processed, or whether it's refused to be taken in. So it's just like that. They're identical in their natures, but they're different in their degree. Extremes can meet and blend, and at some level of reality, everything that is seemingly contradictory may be reconciled. Let's look at the principle of rhythm. Everything has a rhythm to it. There's tendencies that exist in energy. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm will compensate. We can't look at these things as set in stone. Rhythm is a principle that is a tendency for something to swing a certain way. Let's look at it as there's winds pushing along a plane. You're flying against the wind. You got to expend a lot more energy. It's just a tendency. You can still get to where you want to go. You may just have to exert more effort. It doesn't mean nothing can be done about it. We want to make this motion go in this direction, but its tendency is to move in this direction. So more will is required at this time, and it's going to take an enormity of effort to break down these pre-existing belief systems that don't serve who we are. The principle of cause and effect simply states that every cause has its effect, and every effect has its cause. Every single thing that occurs happens according to law. So again, yes, there is free will. But is there free will to ignore law without consequence? No, there is not. That's the limit of free will. Free will operates within these parameters or boundary conditions that cannot be exceeded without consequence. And that's why this body of knowledge has in the past been referred to as consequentialism. It is the knowledge of how consequences are generated by our free will decision-making processes within the boundaries of natural law. So this is the principle of cause and effect. And I think this image does it brilliantly because there is a time gap between the cause going into place and the effect coming around and hitting you. This is why the pattern recognition of cause and effect is more difficult. And moreover, it doesn't exactly happen in a one-to-one ratio like this. What's happening is that all of us are experiencing in the aggregate the wrongs that the human species is conducting on a daily basis, which we do not attempt to rectify and stop. Through our inaction, karma is being accrued. This is ultimately going to come back and bite us. The plane of effects or the physical world is where manifested realities have already occurred due to their underlying causal factors. As such, no power to effect change lies here because that which has already occurred has become that which is, or truth. So let's look at the plane of causality. This is the mental realm. Everything that manifests must first manifest in mind before it can manifest physically. The plane of causality is where causes are set into motion prior to those causes manifesting as formed realities. This plane of causality constitutes the causal factors which underlies and precedes all manifested things and events. All power to effect change lies on this plane of reality. This is the higher realm. This is where our consciousness has to go because this is where all power to effect change is at. Unfortunately, the plane of effect seems to be where human consciousness in the aggregate is trapped. It doesn't want to acknowledge the causal factors lie in how we think, feel, and act, and until those things are changed, the external manifestation cannot change. The final principle, gender. Gender exists in everything. Everything has its masculine and its feminine components or principles. We've seen that when it comes to human brain, consciousness, worldview, etc. Gender manifests on all planes of existence. Spiritual, mental, physical. Very simple concept. See, we already looked at 7 principles of natural law, represented by these circles overlapping each other. Here's the 8th circle. This pattern is called the seed of life. It's the thing that has to be present in order for any change to manifest itself. It is known as the generative principle, or the principle which governs creation. The generative principle is care. This means This is what you actually care enough about to do, to manifest in the world. That's what generates our experience in the aggregate. Most people don't care. Therefore, it is an impossibility for us in the aggregate to change the direction of consciousness and ultimately to get what we say we want. Here's how it actually operates. The heart is ultimately what's generating the experience, because what we care about determines what we think about on a daily basis and therefore how we behave. What we care enough to put our will behind is ultimately what gets created or manifested in our world, because our cares and our desires drive our actions. This is the heart of the presentation here. It's how natural law actually works in our lives. So we're going to build a chart of the natural law expressions. The first expression of natural law I call the generative polarity. This is the force or energy that we are using at the base level to start the process of creation. The positive expression of the generative polarity is love. Love is the force which helps us to expand consciousness and become open to truth. It's the flowering expression of consciousness. The negative expression of the creative polarity is the exact opposite of love, fear. Fear is the basis for unconsciousness. Fear is the force which influences us to become closed to the truth, and it is the force which ultimately shuts down our awareness. The second natural law expression is the initiating expression. The initiating expression is the first stage of tangible and recognizable results which we produce in our lives after we have set the dynamic in motion by choosing between the generative polarities of either love or fear. We choose love, we become open to truth. So what do we gain as a result of existing in the vibratory energy called love? We gain knowledge. Since love opens us up to truth, knowledge is its reception. So that's how it starts. Of course, there's a negative initiating expression, the opposite of knowledge, if we are existing in the vibratory dynamic of fear, ignorance. Knowledge positively influences the quality of our lives because it positively influences our decision-making processes in every area of our lives. Ignorance negatively influences the quality of our lives because it negatively influences these decision-making processes that lead to understanding in every area of our lives. If you're ignorant about how anything works, you can't create the desired condition. Let's look at the next expression. The internal expression is what happens inside of us. The positive aspect of the internal expression is sovereignty. Sovereignty means that you're not owned by anyone else. This is the person who has the knowledge and has gone through the decision-making and filtering processes with that knowledge to come to an internal understanding that they are a sovereign being. As a state of consciousness, sovereignty means that one has unified the three aspects of their consciousness, such that there is no internal contradiction between one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. We become a being that as we think, so we feel, so we speak and act. Above or beyond externally imposed rulership or control by another. We're not torn apart from within in this state of internal opposition because there is no such thing as the rightful rulership of another being through directly imposing your control through coercion. That's a big part of what natural law is about. Let's look at the negative internal expression for natural law, which is confusion. Confusion results when we are in ignorance. In that state of lack of understanding, there's no rulership within. There's anarchy, which means the absence of a ruler. So if there's no master inwardly, that means there's no self-mastery, there's no self-control, there's no self-discipline, and ultimately, there's no self-love. Confusion could be seen as internal opposition, being torn apart from within in such a way that one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions are in perpetual contradiction with each other. The fourth expression of natural law is what happens externally in the macrocosm in society. When you have a bunch of people who are in either this dynamic or this dynamic in their own consciousness, if there's love present, and knowledge has been taken in, and we understand that we're sovereign and we're expressing self-ownership and self-mastery, what state manifests in society? Freedom. Freedom can only manifest when those preceding conditions are in place. It cannot magically manifest by any other means. If we say we want to be free, this is the path we have to take. Now, there's a negative external expression. You could call it slavery. I term it simply control. Control is what I call external monarchy. And this manifests in things like the police state. It results when a society lives in direct opposition to natural law. The fifth and final expression for natural law is what I call the manifestation, or the result that we create. The positive manifestation is order. We get what we say we want to get. Manifested goodness and order in your life. The negative manifestation is the opposite of order, chaos. Chaos is manifested evil, the exact antithesis of the natural order. What people are describing as the natural order, social Darwinism, is a psychopathic chaos. Psyche means the mind, and pathology is an illness, sickness. Psychopaths are mentally ill. They don't create anything resembling order. All they can create is chaos. And they have to have our complicity and cooperation to make that dynamic happen. The exact opposite of what we say we want. Chaos results when there is imbalance and injustice, which results whenever there is ignorance of truth and behavior which is in direct opposition to natural law. So that's our chart, and one last thing I want to say about it is that they're unilateral. They don't cross into each other. There's no such thing as, I've accepted the truth and I've developed knowledge, so now I'm in a state of confusion. You can't go from ignorance to sovereignty. You cannot cross the area of these charts. In order to get here, you got to come from here, 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 and here. Please keep this in mind. These expressions are unilateral. They must proceed in order and in the same column of expression. This next section I call spiritual currency. There's two spiritual currencies, time and attention. This analogy can be seen very readily in the saying, spending time and paying attention. Whatever information or endeavors we put our time and attention toward, we end up getting something in return for that investment of these currencies. This is what real money is. If it's put toward the right goals, the end result is true money. One eye, true spiritual vision, the ability to see. This return could come in the form of knowledge, understanding, skills, expertise, and empowerment, but only if we invest these two spiritual currencies wisely. We should seek to improve our quality of attention by placing it upon information that is capable of improving both ourselves and the human condition as a whole. Such an effort would also constitute a valuable investment of our time. Most importantly, we need to ask ourselves, what kind of quality am I getting in return for my investments of time and attention? How are we spending our time? What are we paying attention to? Sitting behind the hypnosis box? Or are we going to devote our time to some pursuits of wisdom? Which means you got to read. The ancient Romans had the same word. That meant two different things in their language. Liber. Liber meant free, as in not a slave. It's the basis of the English word liberty. The same word also meant book. Does that tell us something? Liber is the basis for the word library, where you can go to become free if you read the right books. We've reunited all the parts of the big library that were cast to the four corners of the earth. The mystery traditions are available at your fingertips now, which hasn't been the case at any time in human history. And what are we doing? We're playing Farmville on Facebook. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we spending our spiritual currency on? And are we investing it wisely for a return of real money, which is actually spiritual enlightenment? What we're really talking about here is common sense. It's knowledge. To know together, to understand together. When I say living in harmony with natural law, what this has to do with is knowledge. The knowledge of truth is what Christ himself proclaimed would be the pathway to true freedom. It goes hand in hand with religious traditions. Because if you're not seeking truth and trying to develop knowledge, that's how this information remains occult. And here's what needs to be understood. We use the word right to mean correct and moral. Correct is moral. It is in alignment with that which is true. Literally, by definition, if it is true, then it is moral. The more you are following something that is false, that is not based in truth, the more you are going down the path of immorality, of wrongdoing. So we have to come to know what is true regarding right and wrong if we are going to be able to correctly, with wisdom, choose between these two modalities of behavior. Meaning, what do you have a right to do? To think that anybody has more or less rights anywhere on the earth at any time in history is a fallacy. It is a lie. It is a deception. It is wrong. It is not correct. It is not based in truth. Rights are universal and the exact same for every human being. A right is an action that if you take it, it does not cause harm to other sentient beings. That's the simple and easiest definition that anybody can give for what a right is. Now, if you don't know what the definition of a right is, you certainly don't know whether you're choosing accurately between a right and a wrong. So let's look at what a wrong is. We use the term wrong to mean both incorrect and immoral. Actions that are based in it result in harm to other sentient beings. They are the cause of harm. A living being or their property must have been harmed in order for a violation of natural law or wrongdoing to have taken place. Any action which does not cause such harm is a right. There's the apophatic definition of a right. This is it, folks, right here. This is the crux of natural law. The bottom line to what this section comes down to is if someone hasn't been harmed, no wrongdoing has been committed. Unless you've harmed somebody else, nobody has a right to stop you from continuing to take the action that you are taking. Another aspect of the difference between right and wrong behavior is there is no such thing as the ability to delegate a wrong. No one can say, you may harm him, that you're allowed to do that morally. No more than anybody can say a group of people may commit a wrongdoing and have the moral right to commit it. People who believe in government believe that we can delegate to a group of people something that is not a right and all come together and agree upon they now possess this right. Rights can't be granted by human beings because rights don't come from human beings. Right and wrong are inherent to creation and are up to us to discover. Similarly, a right can't be turned into a wrong. It does not matter how many people agree that a wrong can be turned into a right or that a right can be turned into a wrong. Force versus violence. Let's look at the difference. They're often spoken about as if they're the same, when in fact they are diametrically opposed to each other. The definition of force is the capacity to do work or cause physical change. For any change to be created in the physical world in any capacity, force must be used and applied. Force is action which is in harmony with morality and natural law because the usage of it doesn't violate rights of other people. Force is action which one always possesses the natural right to take, and this includes the physical defense of someone's person against the act of violence. As soon as you're stepping over the line into coercive usage of force, that becomes violence. It is the immoral initiation of physical power to coerce, compel, or restrain. Initiation, that's the key word there. You know, they'll say, it doesn't matter who started it. All that matters is who started it. The person who conducted violence is the person who struck first. Therefore, when the person beats back that physical assault with force, they have not committed an additional wrongdoing. You maintain the natural right to use force when you are accosted with violent behavior. Violence is coercive, which is always in opposition to morality and natural law for the very reason that it involves the violation of others' rights. That's why it's called violence. This concept brings us to the way I define what real spiritual enlightenment is. There's two dynamics that go hand in hand. I call this the two pillars of enlightenment. The first pillar is the sacred feminine principle, the non-aggression principle. The simple law, don't engage in violence. Don't take life that isn't yours, don't take property that isn't yours, don't take rights that aren't yours. Respect their ownership. Real simple. It's the golden rule. Don't do things to other people that you don't want done to you. there is a second principle of enlightenment. This is the sacred masculine principle, the self-defense principle. Sentient beings have the inherent right to use force to defend themselves from violence conducted upon them by another. There is no such thing as an enlightened being that doesn't fully grasp both of these principles. The law of freedom states that freedom and morality are directly proportional. This means the more moral a population is, the freer it becomes. The more immoral a population is, the deeper into bondage and slavery it goes. These two things are inextricably interwoven and can never be separated from each other. True freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism, which is the idea that there is no inherent and objective difference between right and wrong. Natural law is based upon principles and truth, things that are inherent to creation and are not made by humankind. Natural law can only be harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding, or rejected due to ignorance. Natural law is universal, which means that it exists and applies anywhere in the universe regardless of physical location. Natural law is eternal and it is immutable. Man's law, on the other hand, it's based on dogmatic beliefs, programs that are running in the human mind. Man's law is complied with due to the fear of punishment, and that's a very low state of consciousness, fear. Man's law differs with location based upon the whim of legislators, changes with time based upon the whim of legislators. It's called moral relativism. So what does this mean for the law of man, which people believe is somehow based in morality? If a particular man-made law is in harmony with natural law, then it follows logically that it is redundant. If it's in harmony already with natural law, it's stating a truth that is already there. It's an inherent truth. It's pre-existing, it's self-evident. So if a particular man-made law is in opposition to natural law, it follows logically that it is both false, meaning that it is incorrect, and it's also immoral. Therefore, it's wrong, and it cannot be legitimately binding upon anyone. In light of natural law, man's law is both irrelevant and unnecessary, as it is either redundant or immoral. Government is nothing but men acting in concert. The morality and value of government, like any other association of men, will be no greater and no less than the morality and value of the men comprising it. Since government is nothing but men, its inherent, quote, authority to act is in no way greater or different than the, quote, authority to act of any individuals in isolation. Government has no magic powers or, quote, authority that is not possessed by private individuals. Let he who asserts that government may do that which the individual may not do assume the onus of proof and demonstrate his contention. There's nobody on this planet that can do that. When it comes down to it, it exists in a diseased mind. It's a mental illness. That's what it really is. The word government, people say this word every day almost, and yet they've never looked at the roots of the word. Gubernare. Gubernare means to control. The second part of the word ment is derived from men's mind. The word government literally, from its etymological roots, means to control the mind. Now, it is overwhelmingly clear by people who have studied linguistics that the creators of the English language deliberately chose the Latin noun mens, meaning mind, to represent or mean in English the state of or the condition of, in direct keeping with the first principle of natural law, the principle of mentalism, which demonstrates that in order for any particular thing, event, or circumstance, state, or condition to exist in manifested reality, which is known as the plane of effects, it must have first existed in the plane of causality, or the mental realm, the mind. The original etymological derivation means that it was made that way first by a state of mind which led to its creation in physical reality. Government is based on this illusory and false concept called authority. Authority is jurisdiction. Jurisdiction literally means to say what the law is. And therefore, authority ultimately is an illusion of a diseased mind, based entirely in violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands, and others are slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the commands of the masters. Call it whatever you want, euphemize it, try to make it sound as nice or as pleasant as possible. Anybody who believes government is legitimate, they are advocating the legitimacy of slavery. Ultimately, authority is the idea that man can become God and through, quote, jurisdiction, dictate the law. This is a religion. False religion is a system of control that is based in unchallenged dogmatic belief which keeps the mind in a prison in order to hold back the progress of consciousness. Stop trying to make our religion truth. You've got to start making truth our religion. That's one true divide that exists in humanity. Whether or not an individual believes in, quote, authority and therefore believes that there is legitimacy to slavery. People called statists and anarchists. Most simply put, a statist is nothing more than someone who believes in the legitimacy of slavery. Conversely, an anarchist is one who knows that there could never be legitimacy to authority or government because those terms are simply euphemisms for violence and slavery, which are always immoral and in opposition to natural law. Let's look at the word anarchy, which means without or the absence of, master or ruler. Anarchy, as we can see by putting these together, does not mean without rules. It means without rulers, without masters. Now, if you give people that term, no masters, no rulers, what word are they going to associate those phrases with? Freedom. But if you tell people what does anarchy mean, what are they going to tell you? Chaos, which is the exact opposite. They have deliberately obfuscated the meaning of the word through a mind control technique called endless repetition. True freedom includes infinite possibility. Infinite possibility, by definition, includes the possibility for chaos. The possibility of chaos has to be embraced without fear if we're going to be truly free. Nothing could ever be sanitized or made completely safe as far as physical world activities are concerned. There's always the possibility something could happen, go wrong, somebody could get hurt. If you live in fear that that's going to happen, it's low consciousness. Low consciousness can only create chaos. Fear of the possibility of chaos is the fear of true freedom. Those who believe that authority is necessary and that it must continue because of this fear of chaos have actually been duped into believing that human slavery is necessary and must therefore continue in order to prevent chaos. Now, tell me how that could possibly work. Statism and government are just euphemisms for violence and slavery. Violence and slavery are chaos. So forget about fearing chaos coming on. You're in it now. Surprise, surprise. You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul. Order followers, these are the people who keep this system of slavery in place. Let me just say this again. Order followers are the people who keep the existence of slavery in place. Following orders means, by definition, doing what you are told to do without judging for yourself whether or not that action is right or wrong. That individual cannot be exercising conscience, since exercising conscience means willfully choosing for themselves right action over wrong action. An individual's personal responsibility to choose right action over wrong action for themselves can never be given to another person or passed along. One can only claim that they can abdicate their personal responsibility for such choice to someone else. It can never actually be done in reality. An individual is always personally responsible for their own actions. There are no cop-outs. Stop trying to make excuses or justifications for criminal behavior. Following orders is never a valid excuse or justification for immoral criminal behavior. I was just following orders. I was just doing my job. The politicians commanded me. It's a justification. You're a criminal. There is such a thing as blame for the commission of actions which have resulted in harm or loss to others. This is what culpable means. It means at fault or deserving of blame. Who carried out the Holocaust in Germany? Who carried out the purge in Soviet Russia? order followers, and they're always in the form of police. They call a totalitarian system a police state. The order followers carry out their commands and through their behavior make that condition a reality. The painful truth, the order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver, for the reason that the order follower is the one who actually performed the action, and in taking such action, brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every totalitarian regime that has ever existed upon the face of the earth. Accept responsibility for yourself and your actions, thoughts, and words. You alone make these choices. You alone are answerable to the consequences of your behavior. The feeble excuse that your boss required it, that the establishment expected it, holds no truth or justification. What is the point of having principles if you allow others to dictate your behavior? At the end of the day, you will judge your performance and the contribution you've made to creation. It will not be based on what another expected of you or what you did because you felt trapped. The idea that you just want to be kept safe and you'll give up your freedom to do so, that's how a child thinks. Not wanting to grow up. And there's a reason for this. Self-respect versus self-loathing. People who don't want to take personal responsibility and become an adult are in this psychological condition. It's called self-loathing. Self-loathing is the condition that causes people to attempt to abdicate their personal responsibility and fall into order following and justification. Just as it is not possible for an order follower to truly be exercising conscience, it is not possible for an order follower to truly love themselves. A self-loathing person really is trapped in a trauma, abuse, victim cycle. Self-loathing is created when an earlier trauma has been suppressed instead of confronting, dealing with, and healing that trauma. Such trauma could take the form of feelings of inadequacy, whether real or imagined. That's somebody putting themselves in a cage. Now, what heals self-loathing? Self-respect. This is about looking at yourself. You can't give something to somebody that you don't have. Nobody can give respect to anybody else unless they first developed it inwardly. Self-respect has to come first. The lost word. It's a concept which represents a state of consciousness that has been largely lost to the majority of human beings. In order to speak the lost word, a human being must achieve a state of balance between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Balanced consciousness has come to know oneself, as well as the working operations of natural law. In the enlightened state of consciousness generated through the knowledge of natural law, a human being is finally able to speak the so-called lost word, which is no. No is the word of all power. Only when we say no to those who would claim to be our owners, those who would claim that it is they who will decide which rights we have or do not have, do we stop externalizing our power to anyone outside of ourselves, and in doing so, reclaim all of our rights, all of our property. Very few people in our world have the knowledge, care, and courage that is required to do this. This is why this all-powerful word is considered lost. No. Education is the only solution. And what is education? It means to lead one out of darkness, out of ignorance. Teaching natural law to others, which is what I am doing, has been called the great work. A quantum shift in human consciousness is required for humanity to become free of its self-imposed state of slavery. This great change is not an automatic process, nor is it guaranteed to happen at all. Whether or not it will occur is a function of the human will to learn the truth and to teach it to others. In order to tip the scales of truth and justice back to balance, a certain amount of people need to be doing the great work to help others to receive truth. If we don't have enough people doing that, those scales are not going to tip in the opposite direction. Individual behavioral choices, they are either based in harmony with natural law or opposition to natural law. And in the aggregate, they influence the quality of the manifested shared human experience. We need a population who understands and lives in harmony with natural law. And numbers are required for that to happen. This dynamic acts as a perfect expression of the principle of correspondence. As the individuated units of consciousness are co-creating reality, so the macrocosmic reality shall become. The true great work can only be performed after one has realized the truth regarding natural law and brought oneself into alignment with natural law. That's when you can legitimately start teaching it to other people, because you actually aligned your behavior to it. The true great work is what comes after that. The arduous task of influencing other people to go through the very same process of positive change in consciousness that you have gone through. It is to help them to realize that in supporting and condoning the legitimacy of authority and government, man's law, that what they have actually been supporting and condoning is the legitimacy of slavery, and that they were immoral for having done so. Now that is hard work, because people don't want to hear this. They want to believe what they want to believe. They want to be true what they want to be true. In short, what the true great work comes down to is to actually get people to abandon their false religions, the false and dogmatic beliefs which hold back the progress of consciousness by impeding the reception of truth and natural law. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Not meditating upon it, making it happen through an act of will. This latter procedure, however, is disagreeable and therefore not popular. So few people are doing this work. The answer is to become the teacher. Many hands make light work. If we had more people involved in the effort, it might go smoother, it might go faster. Educate and inform the whole mass of people. That is the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. The words that are attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew: do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. These are words attributed by Jesus, but what you want to put in place of Jesus is the word truth, the way, the light. He's telling you there are going to be people in your own family that aren't going to align themselves with right over wrong. They're going to continue to choose slavery. They're going to continue to advocate slavery. These aren't people who you want to continue to align yourself with. If you have made an effort to truly explain what's really taking place, if they don't align themselves with right, are the people who are ultimately continuing the evil in the world. They're the real spiritual enemy. The spiritual war will really be against inner demons that exist in the psyche of mankind. These inner demons are egos that are hardened into negative knowledge, emotional mind control, and the fear of true freedom. Negative knowledge is the concept that somebody already knows. They don't want to look at something because, hey, I already know what's really going on. It's the illusion of knowledge, and people don't have the truth. Not only don't they have the truth, so they're at zero there, but they're attached to all this stuff that isn't true. That's why I call it negative knowledge. Emotional mind control is the second inner demon. I encounter this all the time through people with my work, because many people don't have the thick skin to listen to somebody like me. Emotional mind control comes in a couple of forms. The New Age variant is this: if it's unpleasant, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it, and I certainly won't want to tell others about it. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. What happens when you do that with any kind of a sickness or a problem? It gets worse. The second form of emotional mind control is people have a problem hearing truth because they don't like the way it's delivered. This concept is about the attractive newscaster. She can whisper in your ear all night with the blue frequencies behind her and say, 2 + 2 = 5. And she's going to get a lot of people to believe that nonsense. But the person who's actually telling you the truth, he might be screaming through a bullhorn and saying, hey, you're in danger. There is an imperative. You don't have all the time in the world to correct this. People say, well, I don't like the way he said that. That comes off as negative to me. They're not interested in the content, the actual information. They're saying, I don't prefer the sound of his voice or the tone he just took. The people who are in this mind state are under emotional mind control. They believe you can determine the veracity of informational content based upon how it makes you feel. And this is a logical fallacy. Truth is belligerent. It is, by its very nature, at war with the forces of falsehood and deceit. Where does the fear of true freedom come from? You can look up here at the top of the tree. The leaves are one's refusal to own their own personal responsibility. Now you would think, oh, that's way down at the root. No. That's the symptom that's manifesting up at the top of the tree. Then we get closer to the real psychological aspect of the problem. Self-loathing due to lack of self-respect. What am I really describing here? We're talking about people psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually immature. Now, what is at the root? If a child doesn't like themselves, they feel they're not good enough, they're not worthy, they have inadequacy and self-loathing, they've gone through a specific type of childhood trauma called abandonment. The human species is suffering from very deeply seated parental abandonment issues. It has always been like that. We have been children on this planet since we have been on this planet. And you know, it is like Sisyphus rolling that boulder up the hill. We just got to get it up to the top and give it that one last push so we don't have to keep doing it again. Who knows how many times we've already tried to do this. We need the knowledge of the real enemy. We need to devote ourselves to service to truth, first and foremost. And we need courage and persistence and practical real-world skills. The knowledge of the real enemy needs to ultimately come first. And this isn't it, folks. This priest class, I'm telling you that in this spiritual war, this is a insignificant, as far as numbers are concerned, fraction of the totality of the human population that could not possibly control the minds and therefore the behaviors of the masses of people without our compliance, without our ignorance. The sleeping masses, hypnotized masses, they're your enemy. People will say, the Illuminati enslaves humanity. They want to think we're powerless victims. There's no choice involved here. This is something that's just being done to us. And I'm here to tell you, free will is always in existence. It's a matter of changing one's thoughts and therefore changing one's choices. Service to truth is required. People say, oh, truth doesn't need to be defended. Nonsense. Because the attack on it is nonstop. If we don't come to her defense, the voice of deception and evil and mind control rules the day. And the voice of truth doesn't get heard. Because the truth itself doesn't have a voice in the physical domain. We have to be its mediums. It's possible for us to co-create a positive outcome in this scenario, but this can only be accomplished if we care enough to learn the truth ourselves, and then we develop the courage to continuously speak it to other people. The liberties of our countries are worth defending at all hazards. It is our duty to defend them against all attacks. It will bring a mark of everlasting infamy on the present generation if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without any struggle, or to be cheated out of them by the artifices of designing men. If you love wealth greater than liberty, if you love the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were ever our countrymen. Persistence is required, constant effort. We are the actual vehicles by which truth operates in the world. Therefore, it is our shared responsibility at this time to help to awaken others by continuously speaking the truth, even if we feel burdened by this task, even if we feel no one is listening, and even if it makes all involved in this process feel uncomfortable. Who ever told anybody that the truth would make you all warm and fuzzy inside? Whoever said that that was the case? These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. There are only two mistakes that one can ever make on the path to truth: not starting and not going all the way. It's about persistence. The truth has to be taken in its fullness. We need real-world practical skills. To communicate truth, skill is required. I'm saying if you want to get it out in a big way to the masses of people, in the new form of media, which is doing things like this, the correct and positive and empowering use of technology to serve humanity and to serve truth. You need good organizational skills. They've done a brilliant job here getting this all on film. This will be going online. You need communication skills. You need to have a way with words. You need to be able to communicate concepts in often a very linear fashion to people so that they can readily absorb it easily. You need graphic design skills in many cases. Presentation skills like putting something like this together. Audio skills, video editing skills, website development, networking, marketing, and promotion. We need to become the new media dedicated to truth. We are the answer, the ones who will help to enlighten other people once we've taken this knowledge into ourselves. I had all this knowledge for a long time. I go to a meeting in the state of Virginia, Virgin, the goddess, care, very synchronistic. A woman comes up to me, she says, "You're one of the most knowledgeable people I've come across. What are you doing?" So what do you mean, what am I doing? She said, what are you doing with all the knowledge you have? You doing lectures, presentations, videos, audio? What are you doing? I'm not doing any of those things. I'm just taking a lot more in, downloading a lot more videos. She goes like this, and it's just so matter-of-factly and harshly. What makes you think you have the right to do that? I'll never forget it. This was her phrase, "You're Niagara Falls in a water balloon. You're taking all this in and all this pressure building up. It's got no outlet. It's going to burst." She said, you have to put an outlet valve on that knowledge and let it flow out of you, and then more will come in. Right now, you're Niagara Falls in a water balloon. I came up with the idea for What on Earth is Happening like a couple of weeks after that, because it's all I could think about. It kept echoing in my head. What makes you think you have a right to do that? I didn't say it nice. Get up off your ass and do something. That was the tone it was set in, and I appreciate it. At the crossroads, this is the last section. We are now in post-apocalyptic times. The apocalypse has already occurred. And what do I mean by that? Well, apocalypse means literally to remove the veil from or to take something out of hiding. The truth about what's going on here and has been going on here on the earth is out. It has been de-occulted. The apocalypse is the great revealing of the truth to the masses of people, removing it from being hidden. What humanity needs to do is make what I call the cosmic apology, because this is about internal change. An apology literally means, let me take back what I just said. Okay, I'm taking it back, I'm removing the word. I'm going away from the former word or phrase that I just said. That's an apology in the standard sense. Let's look at what I call the cosmic apology. The Greek noun logos, which means word, comes from lego. Lego means to speak or to say. The Latin noun lex legis is related to lego. Again, because how did the Creator manifest the physical universe and all the laws? Spoke it into existence. God and not man is the logos, the author of law, the one who spoke the law into existence. This is the truth. Humanity's work is to learn to listen to God's word, God's law, natural law. Humanity must make a cosmic apology by giving the word, which means the authorship of creating law, back to the creator of the universe, because that's the author of the law. That's its rightful owner. If we do it, we can step out of the prison that we've imposed upon ourselves by recognizing our own inherent sovereignty and that there is no legitimacy to slavery. When you understand the tarot tradition, this card represents the will of creation and what creation itself ultimately wants to manifest in physical reality. This card is known as the Justice card. This card represents balance between the pillars, holding the sword of truth in hand, and the scales of justice have been perfectly balanced. It represents sovereignty, and it represents alignment with natural law, and most of all, it represents alignment with truth and the manifestation of order. That can only happen when we align our behaviors to the principles of natural law. We can create a world that is based in actual, real freedom. It is possible. It's up to each individual. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind attention today.